Right. Good morning. I'm Dirk Vinnick, Executive Buildoffsite Director and Chief Executive of CIRIA. I'm chairing today's Buildoffsite members meeting, and I'm very pleased to see quite a few members attending, and we've also got some invited guests sharing this meeting with us today. So I will just do some introductory remarks, and then we'll guide you through the program. Just some housekeeping points. The meeting is being recorded. We will make the recording and the slides available, provided we have speaker consent. You're in listen-only mode. Obviously, if we're on Zoom, so if you want to raise a question, raise your hand, and I will try and pick it up in a Q&A after presentations. And we have quite a packed program. I'm really pleased we've got some excellent external speakers who are going to share some of their insights around industry developments this morning. And I'm also pleased that we've got colleagues from the Buildoffsite team talking about the various member groups that we've got, very vibrant groups around social infrastructure, the utility sector, and transport sector as well. And we are in the process of finishing off some guidance for the industry, as well as about to launch some new proposals. So I'm really excited with the updates we'll be getting from members as well, as you can see on the program. So just to give some background to invited guests who might not be familiar with Buildoffsite, we've been going for nearly 20 years. Initially supported by the government with the agenda of promoting and advocating the adoption of offsite, working in collaboration with our members. We've, I think, managed to influence the government agenda in this field, facilitating offsite solutions, and as I said earlier, delivering guidance. I think we're in a more mature stage now where offsite construction has normalized, but I think there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of removing some of the perceived barriers to offsite adoption. And this is just an overview of our membership, varied membership from clients in various sectors, transport, utilities, but also retail. But you can also see quite a long supply chain represented in our membership. And I reference guidance, which Nigel Fraser will come back to later on today in our meeting. We have been very prolific over the last 4 or 5 years, varying from quantifying the benefits of offsite construction through a work piece done by the University of Cambridge, to more recently talking about the sustainable resilience in precast concrete, which came out in May at the Offsite Show last year. And we're about to launch Offsite Construction Concept and Design. So look out for that one, free to members at Buildoffsite. And we are hoping to start work on 2 proposals, which Nigel will talk about later. So without further ado, I think I'm ready to introduce our first external speaker. I'm really pleased that Simon has been able to find time in his busy schedule to talk to us today about a fantastic initiative, which is sort of responding to the government's construction playbook, which we also contributed to from a Buildoffsite point of view, supporting our members in that. And today we've got Simon talking about the private sector construction playbook. So over to Simon.
Dirk, thank you very much indeed. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Excellent. I think the screen's about to come to me. I'm now in control of it, I think. So thank you, Charlotte, for that. Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to join you today, what I'm sure is a friendly audience with what I'm going to talk about. I think you were all there well before I was, when it comes to moving the industry forward, collaborating and the like. So what I've got is just a few slides. I'm on with colleagues, a bit of a roadshow myself over the last few and coming months to perhaps eulogize about and share and preach the good word about the work that we have been doing collectively. And that's really what today is. I'm going to be talking, as Dirk talked about, trust and productivity is what the sort of the main part of the talk's going to be today, which is it's a physical playbook. It's a document that if you're from the 80s, 70s and 60s like me, you can hold, and obviously if you're a bit more tech savvy, you can download. I want to get into that, but I just want to set a little bit of a context if I can first. There's my ugly mugshot for you all. So I'm with Lendlease's construction business. I've been with Lendlease, and many of you remember it as Bulvis and Bulvis Lendlease, for coming up to 19 years now. And our operations are, of course, global. We're an Australian parented company, and in Europe, here in the UK and in Italy. And we've got an important, busy, and I like to think high quality construction business, doing some of the most significant and interesting both public and private sector projects at the moment, whether that's Google's headquarters next to King's Cross Station, or our town hall in Manchester, or the prison in major prison in Leicester. And I think Andrew from Kier is going to be talking about their prison down in Northampton as well. So, and we're a £600-700 million a year business that's pretty good at what we do, and very pleased to be leading that organisation at the moment. So I don't need to show this audience this slide. I mean, you could, I'm sure, all wax lyrical about how the construction industry doesn't have the best of reputations for many reasons. A lot of it unjust and undeserved, I have to say. I know you're all directly or indirectly involved in the industry, whether delivery or the manufacture for delivery of product and the like. We're a brilliant industry. We're an industry that should be attracting the brightest and the best, that whether you're someone who wants to be vocational, creative, an engineering type, be an indoor sort, an outdoor sort, people of all abilities, all backgrounds, this industry is a great place to work. And yet somehow we massively undersell ourselves, and people think of us back to the days of purely the mucky end of construction, working out on site in the cold and the wet. Of course, there's definitely that to our industry, but I know that most of the people that have dialed into this call and most of the members of the organisation will be thinking about how we do it smarter, better, and that's a little bit about what I'm going to talk about today. Be the Business as the organisation formed a few years ago, and Anthony Impey is the chief exec of that organisation now, and they really look to industry to pull together some of the industry's most significant organisations into looking at how we drive productivity improvement across the construction industry, the whole cycle of the construction industry. I hope you can see the sort of full screen of names there. For those that are sort of dialing in who aren't part of the green room, if you like. But what hopefully you can see there are organisations like British Land, GPE, Great Portland Estates, and Landsec. And it was really important that when we established this group that it was client-led, because you can imagine, for those of you that work in my world of the tier one contractors and the supply chain, if we came up with anything without the clients on board, it would be seen as self-serving. Well, of course, you would say that, wouldn't you? So we've established what I think is a really powerful and representative collection of organisations there that are clients, tier one contractors, supply chain, and both design, project management, and cost consultants. And that sets us up for real success, I think, in what we try to do. What we're not doing is we're not competing with the established groups, Build UK, the Construction Leadership Council, the British Council of Officers, and that's not our purpose here. We're not trying to form another breakaway group. I think many people on this call will recognise that we're quite a fractured, sometimes fractious, but quite a fractured industry that does unique things on a regular basis. And I know that, in the world of DFMA and modern methods of construction, it's looking how we can standardise, but we do different things, and we do amazing things. And you drive around any city or any town and see the diversity of what we all create. It really is something to behold, and it is different to the manufacturing world of cars and televisions and anything else. It is different to that, but that doesn't mean we can't learn. So our ambition is around the area of driving productivity within the construction industry. And almost once our work's done and we've kind of got that established and set up, then that's just pretty much done. And then we'll go back to our day jobs of executing and delivering on the work that we've created with others. We've come up with 3 work streams. It's now moving to 4, and I'll talk about the 4th one very briefly. I'm just going to touch on 1, 2, and 4 briefly because of the purpose of the presentation really is about the playbook, and I'm trying to whet your appetite to that. But we recognize that when it comes to productivity, if you measure it, it kind of gets done, and if you don't, it doesn't. So you can look out and see the 7-step framework that's been created and led by a colleague of mine, Katie Dowding from Skanska, with others drawn from across the organizations you can see there. And that was the first document that we produced. And it really was starting to get granular. It was starting to get into, so what are the right things when you're in project execution? What are the right things you should be focused on measuring, how you should do that? What's the right way to go about doing that? And she worked with, for example, Brian Morrisroe of Morrisroe, so a concrete frame groundworks contractor of some standing, and really looked at how we established the right benchmarks, the right items to measure, and then how you go about doing that. I won't say much more on it now, but I would urge you to maybe Google that, or perhaps I can send a link afterwards to Dirk to share with you all. But just to start to get yourself familiar with what the framework is, and it'll give you also a broader insight into what the Construction Productivity Task Force is and does. The second one is also about data. And what we've established here, the data trust existed already, but the construction data trust, the arm of it, we are in the early stages of. And what we're saying there is, yes, of course, the industry has commercial sensitivities. The organisations that are listed at the bottom of this page, in many ways, are competitors, but we can't change the industry by ourselves. We know that it's true, and it's a truism. It's a cliche maybe, but unless we collaborate, but within the safe space of ensuring we don't breach competition laws, for example, we want to find a way of sharing data from projects. So you've got the measurement data of work stream 1, but data 2 is now each of us that have projects, we're working out which data we share, and that's productivity data. It could be high level, it could be number of person hours on a project versus the overall spend of the project. It could be the project type. Is it residential? Is it commercial? Is it a major project, a mid-size or a small project? Is it a cut and carve or a new build? Is it a concrete frame? Is it a steel frame? There are many, many variants that we can put, to projects that we can establish. And our belief is that once we work those out, and once we, the organisations in the task force, then draw in fellow organisations who aren't yet part of the task force at the moment, but also share that data in an anonymised and confidential way. So the data can't be a trick for the reasons of competition and competitive advantage and the like. But once we've got that data of what works well, and you can imagine the people on this call, everyone will be very familiar with PMV, the pre-manufactured value. It's a huge, again, I'm sure that Andrew, I don't steal his sandwiches for when he talks later, but if he talks as I will often about the major prison we're doing at Leicester, Glenparva, or now HMP Fossway, and the focus on delivering as much of that project off-site manufacture, on-site assembly, it's transformational. The way that we've moved forward in our prison program, and Andrew with Kier, I'm sure the same, be something they're very proud of. Lots of lessons to learn there that we can take forward to other projects as well. Having that data, seeing where we're successful and where we're not, seeing what happens when you're doing a residential building and you're laying beautiful hand-laid brick, but you're comparing that to precast concrete panels with brick insets. What's the difference in productivity? There's a bit of a cost difference. One's a bit more expensive. There's a safety difference. It's better doing precast. But what does that mean from a productivity point of view? The reason the clients are very interested in this is that they want to know that if you do get this data, both the measurement framework and the data trust information, that they will get better, they'll get it quicker, and they'll get it for less. But what the 3 clients are very, very clear about here, and I can tell you that I'm very clear about this with our supply chain and others, is that profit is not a dirty word, but we need a sustainable industry. And I use that in every sense of the word sustainable, but we need a viable industry, an industry that's able to make fair profits, that's to be able to, be viable, to have positive cash flow, and we need a supply chain able to support us. And it really moves me on to, if you like, the private sector playbook and what I want to talk about today and why I think it's so important. It sounds like a bit like yourselves. You know, I and other organisations had a small part to play in the public sector's, the government's playbook, the construction playbook, you know, that came out, I don't know, maybe 18 months ago now, and version 2's already been issued. To be fair to the government, I can't always say this has been true. It was a very collaborative process. But of course, the government's construction playbook is necessarily different in some ways to the private sector playbook, to trust and productivity, because there's government policy that you have to abide by. There are specific rules governing, you know, payment, governing competition, governing, you know, governance generally, and how that works. The rules around procurement that don't necessarily apply in the private sector, but there are many things that do read across and play across to what the rest of the industry did. So, as part of the task force, I, having worked on this, proposed to the productivity task force that we should have a private sector equivalent for lots of reasons. One, the government's done it, and therefore the private sector should equally look to establish that. But I recognise that the private sector is a multi-headed client. There's thousands of them. There's large clients like the ones we're working with here, through to much smaller clients, through to domestic clients, people getting a house extension and everything else. So that we knew it would necessarily be different, but it would be important to do that. The second reason was that organisations on this call, organisations like mine and others, it would be much better if we're looking at investing in our clients and their pipelines. Wouldn't it be great if their approach to the client body, approach to who we're going to be working for, whether it is building new prisons or new defence projects, new hospitals, or building new commercial offices or new residential projects, urban regeneration schemes and the like. Wouldn't it be great if we could broadly approach that in the same way of thinking collaboratively, bringing our specialist supply chain partners, our designers, our subcontractors early, working with them to drive excellence, because that's how we're going to crack sustainability, for example, both social and environmental. It's how we're going to crack improving, you know, the safety of our of the buildings that we build and the way that we build them, that their whole life operation is going to be better because we're collaborating, and we're just going to be a whole lot more efficient doing it. And that was really, if you like, the genesis of why we should have trust and productivity. We launched it in November last year. We had a fabulous event, which I'll talk about in a bit. But this was, and again, for those that were involved in the government's construction playbook, this really was a collaborative effort. And this is just a nod. Again, one or two of these people might be familiar, many won't be to you, but it's a call out that this was, it's great that, I get to stand here and, maybe get a little bit of kudos for Lendlease, but that would be unfair on the reality of the situation. And it was people from these organizations who put in, I would say, thousands of person hours, thousands of working hours collectively to ensure that when we did come up with the playbook, it would be robust, resilient, it would speak for the whole of the industry. I can assure you that there was plenty of tension in the room at time when we had these workshops. There was lots of dynamic debate. This is us in Landsec's office a few months ago, and it was challenging. But why? Well, because you've got PQSs and cost consultants there who believe that they're representing the interests of the client from a cost point of view, tier one contractors, supply chain, designers, clients, everybody. But what we didn't want to do was go to the design by committee. We talk about the old jokes of, if you design a horse by committee, it becomes a camel or a giraffe or something. That's not what we were aiming to do here. It was to come up with something that really did speak to the industry and that people could pick up with, and it wasn't a report, because that's not what we want to do. We didn't want to produce another report. I've been involved in those, and they're great and they're worthy, but they also gather dust. The reason I'm here talking about this today, apart from the invite, which I'm very grateful for Dirk for reaching out to me, is that we are talking to organisations, trade bodies, individual organisations and the like, to ensure that they understand the work that's been done, make sure they get familiar with the task force in its entirety, but in particular the playbook, because the playbook sits above all of the work that we're doing. It's a really important piece of work, and we really are keen to see clients take it up. The great news, of course, is that because I've got 3 clients here, so GP are working with Lendlease on 2 Aldermanbury Square, a major London scheme. That job has been delivered with the 10 drivers of of the playbook and operating, as you can see, the chapters, the principles and the like. The good news is, for everybody, I'm not going to bore you with all 60, 80 pages of this and go through them line by line. I am but giving you a flavour today to whet the appetite. We know that Landsec's next project, which can't say anything about at the moment, that's going to be coming out. It's going to be adopting the principles, and British Land are already doing that at the moment. So 3 of the most important and significant clients in London and nationally are adopting the principles, are telling the market, are telling the contractors who bid for that and who are going to work on it that they're going to be operating in accordance with the playbook and its principles. And we want that now to cascade across the whole industry. I hope you get to hear more about it when you start engaging with organisations in the future. As you can see here, it's it's set up for those that are familiar with the government's construction playbook. There'll be a familiarity, and I want it to be familiar, different, our own unique imprint on it. But here's the sort of, you can see here the chapter headings that we have. If I just flick on to how it works, and again, I'm going to go through this because I do want there to be an opportunity for questions. I'm also aware that I can gabble on for ages, but everything we think about is in the planning of a project, establishing the team properly, setting up the project and defining its success. And I don't mind if some people think there's a little bit of motherhood and apple pie in some of this. I don't mean, because cliches are often true. For me, this is really important stuff. It's really important that you've got clients. And I'll give you an example of what that might mean. Often, certainly on major projects, but on all projects, main contractors like ourselves would be get involved as the design's moving into RIBA stage 4, and very occasionally on simple projects at the end of that, when clients want single stage lump sum jobs, something that we would never do, but I understand that there is a part of the industry that does that. The projects I'm talking about now, they're bringing in the contractors at the end of stage 2, asking us and others to get involved in that process, to then bring in the experts, the supply chain experts, people like yourselves, where it's appropriate to do so, the design team, to really collaborate from day one. There's a reason why the book's called Trust and Productivity. Trust is hard-earned. Our industry does not have the best reputation for trust. If you're a client or an investor sat behind a client, your concern is that once a contractor gets in early, they're going to think, great, the competition wasn't that hard. I didn't have to fix any numbers. I've got a year and a half to work through this, and I'll be able to manipulate the situation. If that's your modus operandi, you don't need to be involved in this. This is not the presentation for you, and it's not the playbook for you. That's not what this is about. This is about people really committing to working together collaboratively, to have the necessary tension within the process, because at times there will be, because these are big jobs often, but not necessarily. They're hard jobs, but it's about setting the projects up for success. It's about transparency. Sorry, if we could just, is that Mark? If we could just put Mark on mute, please. I'm just getting some feedback there. My apologies. Yeah, so if we could, so that's what it's really about. It's about setting the project up for success. The way they go through procurement, ensuring that it recognises the many deliverables, that it's not a race to bottom on price. It is about environmental sustainability and how the project's going to deliver on both the business and the government commitments. It's about the social impact of the projects that we do, and we can make a massive, massive impact. I think you all know that. It's about ensuring that we set up our projects for excellence. And you'll see, for example, site accommodation for a modern workforce. It's really important to me and for everybody in the task force that when you work in construction, you have first-class facilities. It's not some, dirty, filthy, uninhabitable environment, but it's a high-quality environment that our workforce is deserving of. It's about innovation, and it's about, when we finish the job, finishing well and handing over in some style, so the building, is ready for occupation, and that there aren't going to be things going wrong, and we don't have a reputation. We don't want an industry to perpetuate a reputation of having to go back and fix yesterday's problems. I'm cantering through because I think there might be the opportunity for, there might be a few questions to come at the end. Of course, there are non-negotiable priorities that sit all across this, the playbook, and of course the government's playbook as well. Health, safety and well-being, and of course we are health and safety, the most important thing, mental well-being, ensuring that, you know, that the people that we look after, again, I do need to tell you all the stats about suicide within the construction industry, but let's just say it's horrific. I don't need to say that the society now and the pressures on us all, cost of living crisis, the pressure on people that work in our industry and many others is hugely challenging. That is non-negotiable. If we're creating conditions that make people's lives less safe, the public, our workforce, that their well-being is negatively impacted, then we're not doing a good enough job. That's non-negotiable. Sustainability, of course, you know, a commitment to taking carbon out of the environment and our commitment in that space, also non-negotiable. And we've all got organisationally our own challenges. Lendlease has got very ambitious targets. Delighted that we're already net zero in our construction business for scope 1 and scope 2. The way you can all help, by the way, and maybe this might come up in questions, is on scope 3. The carbon that's embodied, you know, the carbon in the products, in the steel, in the concrete, aluminium, you know, those big challenging scope 3 carbon issues that we need to solve together. That's, you have a huge part to play in that. Of course, the topic of the moment in the aftermath of the tragedy, horrific tragedy of Grenfell, is building safety, the Building Safety Act, and ensuring that never again are we building products, building projects, utilising product that has inherent fire issues, or the build quality, that which we build is not built to the right standards. Even if the standards were right, you know, 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, we have learned a lot more as an industry, and we need to be on the front foot with that. And of course, the final one there, our value to society. You know, we can make a huge contribution. I'm so proud of what Lendlease has done, and I'm sure other contractors on here and clients could talk equally about the transformation that they'll be able to have on society by doing the projects that we do and bringing in the communities into where we work, bringing into current and ex-offenders into the places that we work and help transform society. Home straight, I promise, because I am gabbling now, but I love it so much, the subject. Yeah, we do have these 10 drivers for success. When you do get the book, please do go through this and understand what we're talking about, this effective partnerships. Again, as contractors, for me, it is about understanding what the pipeline is, understanding, what the future holds for clients, and then we can make investment decisions. And I've talked about, for example, the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Defence in the public sector, but the same with British Land, with GPE, with Landsec and others. Let us understand what your pipeline is, how you're going to move forwards on it, and then we can invest and we can create long-term partnerships with you and then with our supply chain. Listen, I'll let them read, you can read the rest of them yourselves, but you can imagine there was interesting and robust debate about things like allocating risk fairly and appropriately and getting paid fairly. And I'm delighted to say that the clients were very supportive of this. We launched it in November, as I said. It was fantastic. We had 150 or 160 people there. It landed really well. The next phase of our launch is to do things like this. I can see Dirk's now coming to my screen because he's got some questions that he wants to facilitate. So listen, if you want more, there's a couple of links in the presentation. You can get to those. And Dirk, of course, I will send you any links to the information that you want. I commend it to the audience, as they say in all the best budget speeches. Dirk, I'll hand back to you to maybe facilitate the questions.
Thanks very much, Simon. That was really insightful. Thanks for sharing what's been a very productive series of outputs. The great synergies there between the clients who want to make a difference and the key stakeholders in the supply chain who have got the same mindset. And that's the only way we're really going to drive productivity forward, I would argue. It'd be interesting. I think we will try and put in a link to the private sector playbook so that people can access it easily on this call. I've got a few questions. So the first one from Nigel is, when benchmarking, what will the part be for feeding in information about new innovations that haven't been deployed in the benchmark project but may be used elsewhere or piloted in another context? What are your views on that, Simon?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. We've got, as part of our task force, for example, the lead that we have from Landsec is their head of innovation. If it's not through the data trust, then it can certainly be through the productivity task force. Now, if there's a concern, of course, about anonymity and kind of commercial advantage and intellectual property, that's always going to be a challenge if people don't want to release that. So that's going to be a bit of a struggle. So I would say if it's something that they're happy for the industry to understand, then feed it in through me or others through the task force. If not, you can see who the organisations are, you know, who are involved in this. And you feel that, say, Lendlease are going to be interested in a project coming up where we might want to take forward that innovation. Then you can talk to us individually as organisations, get us to utilise it, and then we'll find ways of feeding into the task force. And then ultimately, it will hopefully become embedded in projects, and then hopefully will become part of the data moving forwards.
I can see Ganga's agreeing with you, Ganga from Sarobak Alpine, who obviously were involved with private sector playbook as well. I mean, a related question, I guess, because the emphasis was on clients and larger organizations driving it, how are you involving the SMEs? Because obviously some of these processes could be quite prohibitive to SMEs and offsite manufacturers. So how is that mitigated?
Yeah, to be honest, I see it as the opposite. Inevitably, the heavy lifting at the start's been done by the organisations who've got the capacity and capability to do that. If you're asking smaller organisations, it's partly through events like this to get the knowledge out there. So first of all, it's get information out and get it so that everybody understands what it is. Then individual organisations, tier one contractors who've not been involved in this are now having their own organisation events, getting one or two speakers. So a bit like you've done here, Dirk, but with their own supply chain. So this is now being cascaded through the supply chain. Lendlease will be doing that. Sir Robert McAlpine, I'm sure, will be doing that. Mace will be doing that. Skanska will be doing that. And then once it cascades through every and that will touch hundreds of organisations who then will deal with thousands of suppliers.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
What I wouldn't say here, Dirk, is, sorry, it's a bit of background noise there. So what I wouldn't say with this is, everyone's going to go and say, oh, I've got to learn and study this. If I'm an SME, I've got 30 staff, a small workforce, a small manufacturing facility, what you need to be doing is talking to the people you supply who are in the construction industry, saying, what do you understand about this? Is there an opportunity for us to get involved early? I think if I talk to every one of your members that have been saying that for years, get us involved early, allow us to, we can bring our innovation and ideas to your projects, we can work with your design team and we can bring ideas. That's how we want to do it. We have to, Lendlease is a management outsource organization. We outsource and we integrate. The expertise comes from, yes, our supply chain, our specialist suppliers, the sub-supply chain. That's where the real innovation comes. Our job is to harmonize that and say, that's right for that. The people on this call have allowed a huge voice and a huge future. The whole industry is moving in their direction. So it's just sustainability, safety, quality, innovation, and delivering productivity. The people in your organization are, you know, right where it needs to be.
And you mentioned sustainability. I mean, I think that's the last question we've got time for, which is around managing carbon across project. And it can be quite tricky to actually achieve net zero carbon through the past 2080 routes with the supply chain, especially on scope 3. So how do you think that's going to be adopted using the private sector playbook?
Well, what you're doing now is all of the organisations are committed in their own ways to, you know, obviously to get to net zero for scope 1 and scope 2. It being a collaboration of organisations. Lendlease can't, yes, we're part of Responsible Steel, Responsible Concrete, and these organisations globally and regionally are looking at ways of driving out embodied carbon or finding, you know, carbon products or products that have low sort of, you know, embodied carbon in them. Again, it's through the collaboration of the organisations, both in the task force, but the supply chain, the specialists are here. If you want to win the race right now and you're on this call, you want to be saying, what can we do to drive carbon out of our products? When I'm tendering now, and I'm sure the same with SRM and Andrew at Kier, our clients are saying to us now, what is your kilogram per metre squared footprint of this building going to be? What number can you drive to? Because we want it to be not 1,000, not 700. How do we get below 500? What is the circular economy in this space? How can we reuse materials in this space? How can we take steel that was, you know, on a previous building, warrant it, and ensure that we can put it into this building? In London right now, Dirk, and I'm sorry I'm waffling now, but in London right now, we can see the planning constraints. It's about how do you reuse as much of buildings as you can. The world of cut and carve is the future of London. There's going to be still quite a few new builds where existing buildings aren't good quality or they're not suitable, but there's going to be lots of, and that's where organisations here should be thinking about, well, reuse, so that drives out scope 3, We'll then look at responsible manufacturing. We'll look at different techniques that we can to drive out carbon. And then again, organizations who are your members, thinking innovatively how they can take carbon out of their products. Those things combined will drive us to certainly a net zero scope 3 position. And in my mind, in the future, in the sunlit uplands, an absolute scope 3, zero position. That's a big ask, Dirk. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we've got the ideas yet, but we should be ambitious because we're a brilliant industry that can solve anything when it's put in front of us.
I love the ambition and the aspiration, and we've shown in adversity as well with recent response to COVID-19 impacts that this industry can work together really well. Collaboration is the key. That's what CIRIA is all about as well. We've just chaired by Ganga produced some guidance on repurposing, retrofitting, reuse of existing materials. That is also, I think, the way forward. So I think you've touched on fantastic and very laudable aspirations that are encapsulated by this private sector playbook. So thank you very much, Simon, for your presentation this morning, and hopefully we'll see you again soon at other events.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Have a great session.
Thank you. So I'd like to now move on to a double act we've got for you, Clare and Nigel, talking about standards, which Buildoffsite contributes through, Nigel being on various BSI committees, and the bios will be put in the chat for you. So I'd like to hand over to who's going first, Nigel or Clare?
Oh, Clare's taking the lead on this.
Okay.
That's right. Thank you. Thanks, Nigel, and thank you, Dirk. Yeah, that was really interesting, Simon. And I think there's quite a good connectivity here with what we're going to be talking about, which is the BSI work in this area, standards development, national and international, which is looking at targeted standards around off-site construction, as well as other standardization activities that have an impact in this area. I'm Clare Price. I'm sector lead in the built environment team at BSI. We are members of Buildoffsite and have been for a number of years now, and I've pitched up a few times to speak to you and promote the idea of standardization and how Buildoffsite can get involved in the work that we're doing. Happily, that's really happening now, and Nigel's very much taking the lead on that. Nigel, did you want to introduce yourself? I suppose everybody knows you, but before we move on.
Yeah, I'm one of the long-standing contributors to Buildoffsite, having been at a client organisation, BAA / Heathrow Airport, for 9 years, and more recently working independently. But yeah, I tend to lead on a number of the research projects within Buildoffsite, and also, as has been indicated, represent the organisation on various standards committees, which also gives us visibility of some of the other things that are going on in related standards, which aren't necessarily core to offsite, but which can come back to help with productivity, etc. What one public consultation recently was on the use of autonomous vehicles on construction sites, for example, which is quite important in terms of materials handling, and that's very much a factor within offsite construction. So I think it's really important that we are engaged with this, and you'll hear some of the work that's going on at the moment from Clare.
And sorry if my sound's a little bit flaky. I think it's this machine is sometimes a little bit problematic. I'll try and speak loudly so that you can hear me. Okay, so I am controlling the screen. Oh, there we go. All right, so very quickly, we've only got a short while, so this is going to be fairly an overview of the work that we're doing. This is covering the three main areas on offsite standards development that BSI is engaged in at the moment. Our new BSI Standing and Technical Committee, particularly 301, which is on offsite and modern methods of construction. I'll talk a little bit on the work that they're mirroring, ISO TC 59's another new committee at an international level. SC19 for prefabricated buildings, and another new piece of work, PAS 8700, which is a new PAS that's literally just started this year on MMC for residential buildings. So they're separate activities, but they are also connected. CB301 is relatively new. It is a standing technical committee. By that we mean it's formally constituted. It has a scope. It has its members are made up of stakeholder organisations. So we have professional members from REBA, from the iStructy, structural timber associations. For example, we have trade associations, including the Construction Products Association, Centre for Wind and Planning Technology, Modular and Portable Building Association, and of course also we have NHBC, we have Buildoffsite in the form of Nigel around the table, BRE attend as well, and the LABC, Local Authority Building Control. It's chaired by someone called Matthew Egan, who is the chair of CEO of Modular. So it is a fully rounded stakeholder group. They are pretty new. The work at the moment is thinking about a pipeline of activity, and so the discussions around the table are very much around what area they might want to think about standards, where they're really needed immediately. So they have been looking at terminology. They've been thinking about methods of specification, specifying, and processes around procurement and so on. A major part of their work is what we call mirroring, providing input basically to ISO, this new ISO committee, ISO 2C50 MSC19. I mean, that was established last year. It was quite a long time in gestation. The Chinese, who are leading on that, had to do a lot of work to persuade the US and Europe in particular about setting this up and the viability of setting this up. It is led by the Chinese, but there is a chairs panel, chairs advisory panel, which we have a seat on, as does the US and France. So they have quite a key role, therefore, in actually developing how the work in that area will be taken forward. They had their first plenary last July. There'll be another one this coming summer. The scope of work that they're looking at is really large. They're taking a whole life cycle perspective of this. They're including terminology and metrics. They're looking at planning, design and offsite production, digitalisation, digital intelligent production management, geometry, tolerances and performance, documentation, construction and installation, requirements for verifications, testing, quality control and assurance, maintenance and reusability of prefabricated buildings. So they're really looking at a huge area of work. And, currently, I think setting up working groups around terminology, around design, production, construction, and maintenance, so getting that overview across the life cycle. I think it's important to say on the national side, so any work that CB301 does, any standards that they decide to produce, would be developed within about 18 months time. That's a general rule for national standards. The ISO standards will take considerably longer than that. We wouldn't really expect to see new standards for perhaps 2, 3, 4 years coming out of ISO, because of the necessity of consulting all the participating countries, their national standards bodies, who all presumably set up a national committee like we have, who will then consult out to industry, then feedback to the development process. So hence it takes a little bit of time. But having said that, the Chinese are really super keen and seem to be really driving things forward as much as they can. So we will see how that goes. We haven't got a work program yet specifically, but we'll expect to see that soon, and then we'll have a sense of what's coming when. And then, of course, it'll be up to CB301 to decide to not only to manage the input from the UK into that work, but also to decide ultimately whether the UK wants to adopt those standards. If we agree with the adoption of them, if they conflict with the national work that they're carrying out, then they might decide not to. It's up to them. And all of that is consulted, of course, with industry. Moving on to PAS 8700 then. We have started that project earlier this year. It's a sponsored project, being a PAS project. DLUC are sponsoring the work. The plan is for a substantial document, possibly 200-page document. It's going to, we've scheduled 2 years, which is very unusual for PAS. A year is much more, excuse me, a year is much more usual for PAS, but because it's a large document and we're building in very extensive consultation for this document. So we've had a couple of workshops and a questionnaire so far to really engage with industry. There were around 50 to 60 people at the workshops. And they have been consulted following on from that with a very brief questionnaire to really target down on what we want to be in the scope of that document. It's looking at residential buildings. It is quite controversial because there's a lot of key players in this area, and you're probably aware that there has been attempts to get agreement across the board on this subject, and that hasn't been very successful. So we're braced for a little bit of difficulty. We had lots of very rigorous discussion as we build consensus. We have a technical author already. Harlow Consulting are providing that. We will be setting up a steering group, which will be up to about 20 people around the table, a big focus group to actually develop the content. And then unusually, we'll be having 4 advisory panels as well for extra consultation. So they'll be covering the very key areas of design, manufacture, install and compliance. And they will be looking at those areas of the document and gaining that extra level of consensus, as well as the usual consultation with a review panel, with a public consultation and comments. And so we expect that sometime next year. And again, Nigel has been participating for Buildoffsite so far. And I'll say a little bit more about how engaged and how big Buildoffsite is.
I just add that Ken Davey has also had an input to the second workshop and to the questionnaire, as Ken's covering the residential side of the Buildoffsite work groups. So we're very much engaged with this.
Thank you. Right. So very quickly, other activities that are ongoing at the moment. There is a piece of work revising BSE and ISO 472, its technical drawing standards, to include drawings for the assembly of prefabricated structures. That is currently out for public consultation, so do click on that link and read the document and provide some comments if you have an interest in that area. There's also BSI Flex 390 on value-based decision-making in the built environment. Flex documents are a new type of document that we produce. It's an iterative approach to standards development. Rather than one public consultation followed by publication, there's usually 2 to 3 consultation phases. They're very quickly turned around. You tend to have a 3-month development process, a month's public consultation, comments resolution, and another development process within 3 months, and so on. Version 2 is out now. It's free to download. Again, the link is on the screen. So when you get the slides, you'll be able to go and have a look at that one. Yeah, I mean, I've also outlined, it's about requirements for implementing a consistent approach to value-based decision making. And again, it's an important standard, especially around the sort of BIM side of things. Standard C350 is the Sustainable Construction European Committee, which our National Committee B558 works with or provides input to various, as I was explaining earlier. It has a subcommittee 1, which is looking at the circular economy in the built environment. And they have been doing some work looking at gaps in this area. Now, my understanding, well, I can tell you that there is a meeting today in Europe on that gap analysis, those findings. That information, I think, will be on the B558 website, Nigel, so available. I think they're putting forward some proposals for new work areas around data measurement and assessment, quality assurance testing and traceability for reuse, the same for recycling, and design as well for circularity. So that's my pretty much whistle stop tour. Before I hand over to you, Nigel, I do want to ask you a question actually around the build offsite input. I mean, I think the first thing to say is that if you do, as members of Build Offsite want to provide any input to any of these things, Nigel is your port of call at the moment for this. A lot of the time, professional institutions, trade associations, and so on will set up a standards group to discuss members' interest, to discuss members' input onto the consultations, and have a coordinated approach to input that's being provided. And certainly, if there's more than one representative of Build Offsite on various committees, it's good for them to get together and have those discussions as well. And I wondered, Nigel, if this was something that had been discussed at all. I'd certainly be happy to help with anything like that.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. We've certainly raised the subject at a number of members' meetings in the past, and not had a lot of members come forward and sort of say they want to be actively engaged in it, but it's certainly worth revisiting now there's some more tangible things going on. What I've been doing with Ken is that between the two of us, we're covering quite a bit of the Build Offsite work group sort of activity, and so we were sort of collaborating, particularly with PAS 8700, because I took part in the first workshop and Ken took part in the second, but we had conversations in between and subsequent to those. So there's a limited degree of that happening at the moment, but I'd be more than happy to extend that.
Yeah, there's no problem. So anybody on the call today, any members, can of course just go into these websites that I've put up here, provide comments for their own organisations, as individuals, as their own commercial organisations. But sometimes there's more power when you're collaborating. So if there's a coordinated Build Offsite response, that's quite powerful. So just to make that point.
Thanks, Claire.
I'm just conscious of the time. I've got a few questions have come in for you, Claire. I don't know if you can read them in the chat.
I can pick them up if you like and go back to people if you're a bit short on time, Dirk. That's no problem at all.
Yeah, if we could provide that information separately, that would be helpful. And Nigel, did you want to add anything, or can we?
No, we can move on. The European one is slightly different to ISO in the sense that should a European standard emerge, then that tends to supersede the national ones, whereas it doesn't with ISO. So it is important that we engage with that.
Okay. So I'm conscious we've got another slot from one of our IAs coming up now, and then we've got one of our members talking about the work Kier are doing at the moment around prisons, which Simon alluded to earlier. But I just want to say thank you again to Claire and Nigel for a fascinating update. There's so much going on, which will be so impactful and powerful for the industry. So good luck with the deliberations, and keep us posted.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Claire. So over to Ken. The bio will be in the chat, and I'm pleased to hand over to one of my colleagues.
Thank you, Dirk. Good morning, everyone. Sorry about that, folks. Brief introduction for me. I worked for a tier 1 contractor for quite a long time, and latterly in a small innovation cell looking at offsite and modern methods of construction. Having moved on from that into the supply chain school and actually delivering workshops and training, and obviously now I'm working with Dirk in Buildoffsite and looking at basically providing secretariat as such for the social infrastructure hub. Hub activities are beginning to pick up. We obviously suffered greatly because of a pandemic, but we're beginning to organise more factory visits. The most recent visit was last September to the NG Bailey Offsite factory near Bradford. We ran a timber webinar. But what I've been doing is, having spoken to a few members regarding the title for the hub, i.e. social infrastructure, that what I'm looking at is new terms of reference, and we're actually suggesting that we should actually adopt a new title, which is the Built Environment Working Group. So working through that, I have drafted some terms of reference. They have been circulated through the Buildoffsite team, and they've been sent out to a potential chairman for the new working group. The group itself would be looking to have sector focus groups to cover different, obviously, construction sectors, and probably sometime towards the middle of May or possibly the very beginning of June is to have a virtual group meeting to circulate these terms of reference and to invite members and non-members. So that's the plan for now. In terms of the actual activities of the working group, we have a visit planned to what has now been named as HMP Mill Site at Long Sutton, which Andrew will cover. Andrew Dewdney from Kier is going to speak about that in his session following on. We're organising a potential visit to the Donaldson Timber factory, production factory in Whitney, where they're actually introducing automation. Dirk has been obviously speaking to Landsec regarding a visit to the forge. We've approached Salford University to find out more and potentially organise a visit to the Energy House. And we've been discussing a possible visit to Stelling Properties in Micheldever. They are what I would describe as a vertically integrated company doing their own production and development. I'm looking to organise webinars excuse me, as a precursor to some of these site visits, coordinated with CIRIA, as you can see. But I'll be looking to Buildoffsite members to propose some of the topics, but obviously with a major emphasis on reducing carbon. So just a brief overview then. I find the Forge quite a fascinating project. Whenever I see this image, which is lifted from the REBA plan of work DFME overlay, it reminds me of an Airfix kit. And I think that's the basic principle in terms of platform design, is having a series of components that can be reused, improving productivity, which picks up on what Simon was saying, but not stifling innovation and not stifling design creativity. Some admirable objectives from that particular project. Just very, very briefly, not wishing to steal Andrew's thunder on Millsite, really fascinating project. I think one of the key things here is the fact that 4 tier 1s have actually pooled their staff and experience to actually get this project on site in less than 16 months. Kier, I think, is running I understand is running a project in terms of tagging and tracking precast components, looking to improve productivity, quality, and potentially to improve valuations to reduce the amount of effort required. So at this point in time, as we are rather short and have run over slightly, what I'd like to do is to pass that over to Andrew to take up his session and explain what Kier have been doing over the last 12 months. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone. Yep, thank you very much. I am just checking if I have control, which I do now. So I'm gonna flick forward a slide and then come back. So we've obviously referenced Millsite quite a few times during this presentation. So I'm glad no one's stolen too much of our thunder. In terms of my presentation, I'm going to help everyone and try and get us on track a bit more, because Dirk's asked me to just give an update on what we've been doing the last 12 months. So I've picked out a few highlights, but it's not going to take 10 minutes, I wouldn't have thought. In terms of Millsite, the best bit is the alliancing. So we've been working with the MOJ on prisons for about 15 years. So we've developed our learning from HMP Oakwood, which we completed in 2010, and then have used that basis of design for 5 wells and developed a real reference design, which then Lendlease used for Fosse Way, which has then come into the Alliance for New Prisons, which is the 4-way alliance with ISG, Langs, Waits and ourselves, where each of us have got a prison each. And as you've alluded to, we've worked together, taken our brands off, worked together and been able to get Millsite to site in 16 months and aligning manufacturing capacity with the precast for 5 wells that we were finishing off, Lendlease's job, and then these 4 projects. So we've been able to map out that capacity pipeline for the precast manufacturing. Because if you imagine with all 4 matting contractors going out to the same supply chain, you'd really struggle and you'd get bottlenecks. So we've been able to work through that capacity. It's been a really interesting approach. Everyone's ended up pricing each other's prisons, which has been quite an interesting but really collaborative approach. As you've alluded to, Ken, we have been developing our digital tools and approach. Our 5 wells digital approach was absolutely cutting edge. We're so proud of what we did. One of the add-ons we've done for Millsite is this component tracking. So you can see on the screen, the right hand side is a live digital twin for the image on the left. As you can see which buildings have been done using precast, and it tracks design sign-off, manufacturing sign-off, and installation sign-off. So it really improves our productivity across the board, helps client side in terms of vesting and valuations at the end of the month, helps us with managing design and all the quality that goes with manufacturing. So it's been a really good exercise for us that we're really happy with. I'd also reference that Kier have launched a new podcast called Beyond the Build, and the first episode on that is on the alliancing process that we've gone through and the benefits of it. And David Mosey and the MOJ are on that podcast, so I can put a link to that for everyone It is worth listening to. It really explains and talks through the benefits of that alliancing approach. I'm going to go back a slide to this one. So in the last year, we've been working really hard to further integrate our supply chain. And one of the real successes we've had is getting onto the Crown Commercial Services Offsite framework. So this is a new framework that's taken over from an old modular buildings framework. It has a £10 billion throughput for the spend in the next 4 years, and it is split between those key sectors, which are all our key departments where we work for the government. So we do about 80% of our work for the government. So they're the the key sectors that we work in. Interesting to see the thermal retrofit, and that's for an offsite panelised retrofit. So you can see where the government's thinking about that. And as part of integrating for this framework, we've set up 2 JVs. So Kier have set up a JV with McAvoy, Kier McAvoy, for our 3D lots. So each of those key sectors is a 3D lot. And then the bottom right, our 2D panelised JV, Kier Metec. So each of those government departments or sector departments also has a 2D lot. So we're really happy with our further integration and how we're getting really close with some of our supply chain. And then the last slide I have is just a bit of an update on our private sector, I suppose. So we've won a couple of really interesting jobs in London and with commercial private sector clients, both of them heavily offsite based. The market for offices is still quite buoyant, surprisingly, after COVID. Absolutely, the cut and carbon retrofit is up there as well, which is where we're looking to in the future. But certainly, we're really proud of some of the commercial offices we're currently delivering on site at the minute. And that is pretty much the update of our key offsite areas throughout the last 12 months. We've got offsite projects across the board, across all the sectors. But I wanted to keep it quite short and sharp and give you an update.
Thanks very much, Andrew. That's a really good overview. I'm surprised you didn't mention winning the Infrastructure Award of the Year last year, but a really good job and showing what members are doing in terms of trailblazing on the offsite front. So thank you for that. I don't see any questions, but if there are any questions, we can come back to you separately on that. So I'd like to pass on to another colleague, Farita, who is leading on our engagement with members in the water sector. And over to Farita.
Hi, good morning. I have to first apologise that my internet is unstable because I've had to actually connect with my mobile phone as Virgin's gone down this morning. So I'm hoping everyone can hear me, which is fantastic. So I'm just going to give you a quick update of what's been going on the utility sector. Last summer, we actually published the WIMES 802 with the Pump Centre after 10 full-day workshops, which were facilitated by Buildoffsite. So Roger Marlowe's actually on this call from Arcadis. So he was responsible for actually writing up a huge amount of all the updates that went through. So we had participation across the water buying sector, as well as supply chain, which was really, really engaged. So we actually came up with quite a few new specifications for the water industry. So that was fantastic. We also, as Buildoffsite, participated and we sponsored the Future Water Networks November, which happened last year. So that was 4 weeks of full engagement with water organisations, as well as supply chain, lots of different seminars and innovations. So that was really quite fun, and a few face-to-face meetings as well. Today, it's going to be more interesting than listening to me, but we've got 2 new members in the utility sector. The first member is Silotank. So they were key contributors for WIMES 802 and the review of chemical dosing kiosks, tanks and bunds. And they're leading the way in modular prefabricated solutions for drinking and wastewater. So I'm going to hand you over to Seamus Carmichael, who's the MD of Silotank, and he's the driving force behind the rollout of conical settlement tanks in Ireland. And he's also influencing greater adoption for offsite across the drinking and wastewater industry. I also have a new member, Aliaxis, who are experts in fluid management solutions, really snazzy way to put it. They provide high performance solutions for the transport of sewage and stormwater through their durable and flexible PE pipe system. So you'll be hearing from Shane Mooney, who is the product manager at Aliaxis, and he's passionate about delivering smarter solutions to the construction industry. And since 2019, he's taken a pivotal role in innovating around the delivery of MEP. So first of all, I'm going to have Seamus on. So he's got a few slides that he's going to run through. So I'm going to hand you over to Seamus now.
Good morning, Frida. Good morning, fellow members. Thank you for having me today. I'm Seamus Carmichael, Managing Director of Silotank, and we're based in Belfast, Northern Ireland. For those of you who don't know our company or have heard of us, we've been around for about 31 years, leading manufacturer in chemical, liquid and drinking water storage tanks. We also make process vessels, salt saturator, pressure vessels and scrubbing systems and odor abatement systems out of a range of thermoplastics and fiberglass materials. As Frida said, we were involved with Roger Marlowe on the rewriting of the wine standard and made our contributions there to the rewrite and republication of that standard, which came out this year, hopefully for the better. However, today I want to talk to you about conical settlement tanks. For the last 10-15 years, we've been building these in fiberglass, and through our experience in working with various contractors, we realized that the on-site part of the construction of these sectional units was causing considerable time and considerable safety issues. And what I mean by that is that where we have like a 6-meter diameter unit going to a wastewater treatment works, this would have been supplied in sections which would have had to be bolted together and then laminated and passed down into the hole, and then the pipework and weirs would have had to be built inside it. So we thought to ourselves about 4 years ago, there must be an easier way to do this. And we looked at a factory constructed unit. The photograph you see in front of you is for 2 5-meter diameter units. And these are made in 2 sections, the main section cone, and then there's a smaller section cone. So the ability of what we've produced now is that our HDP conical unit, with a wastewater treatment work, the hydraulics of the site are very important. So shell heights may vary, and through our approach and our manufacturing, we can customize the diameter of the unit to the specific site, which does 2 things. Number one, it reduces the amount of material, and finally, obviously, the amount of carbon, but it also allows for a more targeted treatment process, which benefits the end client. The beauty of using the high-density polyethylene material over the traditional fiberglass is that it has better chemical resistance properties. And as we all know now, the current market place, people use a lot of chemicals in their houses for cleaning, which find their way straight into the wastewater treatment plant. The internal finish of the conical settlement tank in HDP is like a glass smooth finish, which aids the cleaning of the unit and the operation of the unit, which we found received feedback from various operators that's a benefit. Units are designed to recognize standards. We use thermoplastic design standards. We also use finite element analysis in order to analyze how the impact of concrete in the surround affects the unit during the installation process, and everything leaves the factory tested. So all our units, what you call it, have all the pipework, the weirs, the diffuser drums are all built into the unit before it leaves, and they're transported to site upside down and then topped and tailed. And if they're over 5 meters, the bottom cone section is joined at site, and then it's dropped down into the hole, filled with water and backfilled with concrete. So the traditional way, and what we had done up until 4 years ago, was to make these in fiberglass, as I said, and it brought a lot of health and safety. And our original ethos and objective behind developing a factory constructed unit was that we wanted to reduce the on-site installation time, but we also wanted to reduce the fact that operators would not have to climb down into these units. And some of them are 7 meters below the ground in order to fit pipework and fit weirs. So the HDP has cured that, because they're all welded in at the factory and leave the factory constructed. The other problem we were having as well is that weather was dictating how quickly we could install a GRP unit, because after the sections were bolted together, the joints inside had to be laminated, and you couldn't do that in cold or wet weather. So the outcome of what our HDP construction, for say something like a 6 meter diameter, it's saved the contractor about 3 to 4 weeks on site before they can commission. So it's been a big success. I have some shots here for you just to show you the install. You can see actually the depth at which the excavation goes down, and the amount of reinforcing of the surrounding soil that's required. So on the larger units, which have got 2-piece, we send the smaller cone section forward to the site, which allows the client to install this and backfill it. So when the larger 6 meter or 5 meter or 5.5 meter diameter section arrives on site, it can be topped and tailed very quickly and joined to the already installed. On units that we sent to United Utilities for bulkly, Vulker Steven, from receipt of a 6 meter unit, after having got the small cone section the week before, they had the unit installed in 2 days. And we're very pleased with the time savings that they'd achieved. You can see that the amount of reinforcement that goes around the unit, which is usually required due to the fact of high water tables in a lot of areas, and then a couple of shots of the finished concrete surround and the bridge that goes over the unit. As Simon had described earlier, carbon is going to becoming probably one of the major purchasing decisions going forward for products, and we seen this coming more and more to the forefront for the last year, and have appointed an internal carbon manager, where we're looking at all our products from the point at which the product, the granule is actually made for the HDP, right through to the delivery to site. And what our analysis, with the help of Invest Northern Ireland and a carbon specialist, we've now developed a carbon calculator model. And the interesting thing that has come out of this is that with when you compare a HDPE unit to a fiberglass conical settlement unit at a 4 meter diameter, there's a 28% saving in carbon, which is massive. You know, the good thing about the HDPE is that it can, at the end of its life, it can be taken out, it can be cut up, and it can be turned into regrind. And this, you usually see this product present itself on park benches and various products like that, decking. So yeah, carbon is going to be the driving force going forward, and we can see that becoming stronger and stronger every year, and being asked for by more and more water utilities. What is the embedded carbon in your product is the main question we are being asked month in, month out now. So we're glad to be able to present that now. So yeah, joined the Offsite Build initiative. Farida is very convincing and highlighted the merits of it, which we found to be very true. And we're only a member now about 6 months. Farida's been helping us with spreading the word of our offsite construction, factory constructed HDB conical settlement tanks through various water utilities. That's a slow process, but we're unstinting in our approach. Welsh Water have been very engaging with us, and we've been feeding lots of information into them and waiting for further feedback to come back from them. And Farida's been developing a range of case studies for the various sites and projects that we've been doing over the last 3 to 4 years, just to show the marketplace the adopted benefits that contractors are receiving from using the HDP conical settlement tank. Anyone, any questions?
Yes, I was just going to say we have some questions through the chat, if I may, if I can ask Saeed to put it through the chat as well. There's a question from Ganga Prakya at Sorok McAlpine. What is the design life of the HDPE CST?
50 years.
50, yeah.
Yep.
Very good.
So the HDP unit is effectively a liner, and it is reinforced with the concrete. So the unit is designed so that it will take the wet concrete, what you call it, before it, the imposed loads from the wet concrete as it's being backfilled. So we fill it with water, and as the backfill starts to rise up from the bottom, the water level is kept usually a meter above the concrete on the outside to balance the pressures. And then once the concrete hardens, the concrete becomes a structural integrity.
And there's a question from Zaid as well about the soil type or strength considerations.
Yeah, these units are designed to be backfilled with concrete. And where you have a high water table, it's important that you get a proper civil contractor to design the concrete surrounds using reinforcing correctly.
Okay. If there aren't any other questions, I think we'll move on. Farida, do you want to introduce Shane for us?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy to. So our next participant from the utility sector is Shane Mooney. So he is the product manager at Aliaxis, and he's passionate about delivering smarter solutions to the construction industry. And he's also playing a pivotal role in innovating around the delivery of MEP. So Shane, when you're ready, over to you.
Thanks for the introduction, Farida. It makes me sound dead good, that does, so I appreciate that.
We all need to sound passionate.
I absolutely am. And hopefully that comes across during my presentation. I think I've got control. What I want to do today is just describe a little bit about what Aliaxis are doing in the MEP space. But before I do that, I'd like to give a quick introduction on who Aliaxis are. So we often describe them as the biggest company you've never heard of in the UK in particular. Aliaxis are a global fluid management solutions provider who are responsible for the portfolio of all of these well-known brands that you can see on the right-hand side here. We're a global company which play in almost every region across the world. We're not very present in Africa and China, but apart from that, we have got some presence all over. We're a £4.3 billion revenue company across 40 countries, supported by 14,000 colleagues and 80 manufacturing locations. We play in subsegments across the built environment. Today, we're very much focused around commercial buildings, whether that be a healthcare facility, an education facility, or a high-rise resi building. But we also are quite present in the infrastructure space and do some great work in the industrial space too. So whether that be delivering water, handling waste, delivering chemicals, petrol, air, we've got solutions in our portfolios to be able to handle them. Ooh, sorry, I've lost control. So what I want to discuss today is our platform approach to delivering MEP, and it's our small way of trying to contribute to delivering a better built environment for the future of the construction industry. What you can see in front of you here is a suite of the riser products that we have developed. So on the most basic end of the spectrum, you can see here some sub-assembled kits of parts to deliver hot and cold water services, along with full prefabricated story height stacks and prefabricated soil stacks. And these three solutions are particularly good where these services are decentralized from a main riser space. We then move on to some of our slightly more complex solutions, like this riser panel that you can see here, which is suitable for when you've got multiple services that need to be connected to one side of a riser wall. At the most complex end, you've got the full riser module, which is hosting a range of mechanical and plumbing products where services are mounted to multiple sides of the riser wall. So what many of you will know is that this is, delivering MEP in this fashion is not completely novel. It's not completely innovative. We have developed some interesting innovations which make the approach that we've decided more led by the pains that are experienced in the industry today. Anyone that has worked with these types of solutions will know that the real pain point is making the final connection between services. This is more than just about riser modules. It's about lateral ceiling mounted cassettes. It's about manufactured utility cupboards and other second fix apartment type solutions that we bring in with through both internal innovation and through works with our partners. Again, some of this may be very, very obvious to people that have worked in the industry a long time, but I'll go through because there is a point where it becomes a little bit different. So naturally, delivering this sort of solution relies on collaborative design at a really early stage of a construction project. And we see that the most ideal stage being between 2 and 3. Services are pre-installed by the experts that we have in-house in a dedicated production environment, and all of the benefits that sort of controlled environment brings. Each service is fully tested before it leaves our factory to robust quality procedures. So that's it could be the ventilation pipe, it could be the soil and waste, and pressurized connections too. The complete modules are delivered to site in line with the demands of the project schedule. So that's no different really to how other providers are delivering these today. However, we are focused on the installation, as I mentioned earlier, and the proposition is that we will lift these modules up, we will lower them, they will click into place, and they will connect without the need for any manual intervention at all when it comes to the individual service connections. The innovation you can see here, hopefully you can see well here, is a precision cut plate at the top of each module with an integrated pin and bush system, which aligns plate to plate rather than frame to frame to ensure precision alignment. The connection innovations that we've done between hot and cold water services, our soil and waste pipes, have been done to ensure that we can cater for the lack of tolerance that exists within construction today. Being the manufacturer of lots of these systems gives us the opportunity to pave the way for a single solution warranty, more in line with the needs of the building than is provided today. And the system will naturally pave the way for standardization between common projects, hence the platform approach. how much time have I got left? I'm going to race through a bit of this just so I don't overstep the mark too much. We've spoken a bit about this already, but speed of install is installing these things efficiently has really been a focus to us. What we expect to do is to set the foundation plate before any risers are delivered to site, and then when they're delivered to site, they simply land on top of each other with no secondary motion needed. There is some obvious health and safety advantages, like people not working over each other on site in quite a restricted space. But we have also built in a full protection grid to, so no GRP needs to be retrofitted when pipes are installed. There is no need to make those manual connections, which is obviously creating risk on site. Doing it in the way that we're proposing, we believe greatly reduces the reliance on skilled labour, and we believe that the labour that would usually be deployed for that can be redeployed elsewhere onto other critical path activities. Delivering in this way naturally will pave the way for better facility management. So we think that the whole principle of doing what we're doing is to make sure that what is designed nice and early on in a project is delivered on site in reality. And this is going to be helpful to guide people to exactly what they need to find. I don't need to go through that. I've been through that. The module that we've designed that you saw on our screen, the big riser module, can stack 16 stories without the need for resetting. There is a lateral support required at every 8 stories. As mentioned earlier, all components will be tested before delivery to site, and we anticipate that we will need to cap off the complete riser before pressure testing the entire building before it goes through to the full commissioning. Again, just a quick reminder, this is not just about risers. We envision this being a full turnkey solution through both our own innovation and our partners. I'm being told to wrap up, so I'll do so very quickly. The way that we deliver quality helps to deliver means 3 key things for the future of building. Operational performance, things being built better and as they're expected to be, simplified facility management for the reasons mentioned earlier, and the paving of the way for a complete solution warranty.
Thanks very much, Shane, for a brilliant member presentation. We've got quite a few questions, so I just wanted to run them past you. Ganga's asking about the lateral connections of the horizontal modules. Is that still the same principle of plate and pinion?
Sorry, is the same principle required for the lateral connections?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see the chat.
Let me just, I'll check out the question. So the question is, was it about tolerance of lateral connections connecting into the riser module? I can't, bear with me, I'm ever so sorry. What about lateral connections of horizontal modules? Is it still on the same principle of plate and pin? Yes, that's correct. Sorry, the picture wasn't particularly good on the slides that we shared, but yes, we envisage it working on that same principle. It will also use the same connection innovation we've developed for the riser, because it allows that inherent, it caters for that inherent lack of precision when it comes to how buildings are built today.
And could you also answer Nigel's question about the strength of the pipes?
So I'm just trying to find it. Nigel, does the strength of the pipes connections within the modules get taken into account when calculating the strength of the carrier frame to reduce material content? Does the strength of the pipes connections within the modules get taken into account when calculating the strength of the carrier frame? So yeah, just a quick mention on this. We've done a complete review with Peter Dan, so structural consultants, to make sure that in operation and with the services that these need to host both dry and full, that our frame is suitable to carry that load. Does that answer the question, Nigel?
In part, it's always just struck me that the actual often steel or even plastic pipes that are put in these assemblies do have quite a lot of rigidity and strength in their own right. Whereas a lot of the calculations I've seen in the past have been sort of assuming that the frame has got to do all the work in terms of lift capacity and structural integrity of the module. And I just wondered whether you take the content of the module into account when you're calculating the different types of frames that you need.
Absolutely, and we've had to skip quite a lot of detail just for the sort of restrictions on time, but the way that we've designed this is sort of a story height module, so you've got the ability to to adjust as you move up the building, so you're not having to so you reset the datum every time you move up. So the modules that we're anticipating delivering would be circa 3 meters high, and we've taken into consideration everything that would need to hold. What I would say on that point is that, like mentioned, I have moved through stuff very, very quickly, and I've just about sort of covered the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the benefits that we think that this could bring, projects in the UK. So what I'd like to ask is, if anyone's got any projects, or even if you haven't got any projects and you just like some more details, I'll leave my contact details in the chat, and please feel free to get in touch. I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe also answer some of the questions just through the chat, because there's one on where these units are prefabricated, which might be interesting to answer. So just in the interest of time, because we've got quite a few others waiting to come to us on this members meeting, I'd like to now introduce, and thank you very much, Shane, for a fantastic presentation.
Thanks for the time. Thank you.
Really thought-provoking. Let's move on to Paul Jewell, System Development Manager from National Grid. His bio will be in the chat shortly. He's going to give us a really interesting insight into really fast-moving developments on prefabricated EVs in terms of the infrastructure. So over to Paul.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I've had a really interesting morning listening to all of this. I think electricity is perhaps not quite something that I would have put in the world of modular build or offsite. So what I want to do is go through some of the things that we're doing, go through some of the changes that we're making. It will be quick, but I'll also advertise the fact that we've agreed we're going to join you at the event at the beginning of May that you're having in London. So we can go through it at a slightly slower pace at that event, but let's get into it at the moment. So a little bit about National Grid. It's interesting because National Grid is a name that everybody knows, but the bit of National Grid that I'm from is a bit that is a recent acquisition for National Grid Group. So I think when people talk about the grid, they talk about the transmission bit. So the bit with the orange boxes on the left-hand side, that's the high voltage backbone network across the whole of the UK that looks after electricity transmission, connects power stations to everybody. The bit that I'm from is the green bit. So in our world, we're a company that were called Western Power Distribution before we were called National Grid. And actually, if you're as old as me and you can remember nationalisation, we were South Western, South Wales, Midlands and East Midlands electricity boards. But we basically serve 8 million customers across that chunk of the UK. It's about a third of the customers in the UK. And it's likely that if you've got an electricity supply, it will come from us. There are independent operators working in patches, but generally, if you've got a supply, it's ours. And we know that the 8 million customers in our areas are going to be looking to us to help them get to net zero and help them decarbonise. So that's where we sort of fit in. And where we fit in a networks point of view is that over on the left-hand side of that slide, there's National Grid Transmission. The bit with the blue in the middle is National Grid Distribution, the organisation that I'm from. And over on the right-hand side is the good old customers. And with the changes of decarbonisation and net zero, what we're finding is there's a different mix of customers on our network. a lot more customers that will generate electricity straight into our network, which isn't the old traditional role where all of energy was generated at large power stations over on the left of that slide and pushed across the right hand side. So we're changing the way that we do things, all in the line of trying to get the government to net zero and get the country to net zero. And I've mentioned net zero a couple of times. Where that comes from, that net zero sort of shorthand, is from a government announcement, which I think was when Theresa May was Prime Minister, to get to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. So it's a big ask. It's a good target. The original target was, I think, 80% reduction. But that's been in our world since early 2010s, and the carbon plan document that's there, which is a government document, still exists. You can still download it if you're that way inclined. And what it basically says is that the UK is going to reduce its carbon emissions by taking energy that we previously used for heating and transport and turn it to electricity. So we're already expecting more energy to be supplied by our network. And I was interested in the question about asset life to the speaker a couple of speakers ago. The electricity grid essentially has a 50-year asset life as well. So if in 2023 we're not already building assets that are ready for a full decarbonised future, then we're missing our opportunity. So thinking about that and thinking about where things are going, I just want to play some government numbers to you. If we fast forward to 2030, you will not be able to buy a petrol or diesel car. You will buy a hybrid or an electric car. And we know there's 1 million registrations in the UK a year. We also know that by 2030, government is expecting there to be 600,000 heat pumps a year. So if you take that 1.5 million-ish things, you put it into our network with 1/3 of the UK customers, we get into a world where we're going to be connecting 500,000 things a day, either to existing connections or to new connections. So 500,000 a year means 2,000 every working day. There's a whole volume sales thing, which I won't talk about today, but there's a whole world of change in our industry to get to that position of being that sort of volume sales provider for people that need electricity connections or want to add existing stuff to connections. Those numbers are quite interesting. They feature in our business plans, and they're going to underpin what we do in the future. In our world, when we were looking at electric vehicle charging, we looked at domestic charging first, and in fairness, a lot of early adopters of electric vehicles tend to be people that can afford relatively new cars, so tend to be people with driveways and garages. So a lot of that early heavy lifting was done by the existing network. But we then started looking at what happens on the motorway network. Where do we go with motorways? I was looking at what we should do with this and how we should change what we do at the same time as actually the government set up Project Rapid. So Project Rapid is a fund, I think it's a £950 million fund to put charging capacity on motorways and trunk roads. The first thing they did was worked out how many megawatts of capacity is required at each motorway service. It tied in with the sort of numbers that I was coming up with, and in very simple terms, it means that a motorway service will have the demand of a small town to feed all those chargers. Now, if you take the sort of substation that we build for a small town, it's the picture on the right-hand side. It's probably 40 meters by 40 meters. It's got lots of outdoor equipment. It's been built on site as a bespoke build. It was not going to work for the future. And where I went was thinking, well, we're really good at putting substations on housing estates, the little 1 megawatt substations that we fit to feed houses. Why can't we make a version of that for motorway services? So we created the Take Charge project, and the brief of that project, the brief that I gave Rush Transformers was, I want that picture on the right hand side, but I want it shrunk into 2 shipping containers. So yeah, they looked a bit oddly at me the first time I asked, but after asking a couple of times, they sort of got on with it as part of a project. So we created the project. It's been funded through innovation funding, which is really useful in our world because our innovation funding comes from customers. So everything about the project is publicly available. We looked at Exeter. We were working with motorway services. Exeter seemed like a good site for them. It was a good site for us, and actually it's a good site to tell a story because it is the site that people stop at the end of the motorway if they're going on holiday to the southwest. So we've basically got to a position where we have delivered one of those big substations in a couple of shipping containers. In fairness, if you look at the photo there, that's a photo of a transformer that isn't in a shipping container, because when I said to Brush, can you put that in a shipping container? They said, well, a transformer sort of is a steel box. There ain't a lot of point in putting it in another steel box. The capacity we've put at Exeter means that there are now, what are there now, 16 grid serve chargers, another 14 Teslas, and another 10 or 12 grid serves on the way. If you're an EV driver, that's not the sort of population you expect. And customers at Exeter, driving customers, have told us it's a game changer because of the volume of locations that are there. Now, that's what it looks like. And you can sort of see that it comes in two boxes. The box closer to you is the transformer. A total change in the way we build transformers, in that most of the ancillaries are already bolted to it, so it can come in one lift. The box behind is the box that has all the switchgear in it. And that, again, is another single lift. And I was there the day that this was delivered, and it's fair to say that it took longer to build the crane than it did to hoist those two bits of kit onto their plinths. And that's sort of what I was looking for, something that gets most of its build done offsite and comes together in one piece. So just to sort of bring some themes back to the world that you guys are in, we've always built substations bit by bit. It's unusual for us to turn up with two boxes and just dump them on site, but it's perfect as a solution that we've always used at 11,000 volts for the supplies that go to housing estates and the like. So what we needed to do was make it bigger, make it fit. So two boxes. You saw the transformer on the last slide. That's the picture of the switchgear box. Another thing that we did is that those two boxes, there's a lot of small wiring between the two. We created the umbilicals between the two as sort of specific plug and socket arrangements, such that a lot of the pre-commissioning testing of all the kit that runs between the two of them could be done at the factory and just plugged in the same orientation when they turned up on site. And that is essentially a quick run through what we've got for the future. So there's some questions, Dirk. Do you want me to?
Yeah, by all means. The obvious one is around expanding to other parts.
Yeah. I think when you're looking for the locations like that, that one we built was 12 megawatts or 12,000 kilowatts of capacity. We think our standard is going to be 20 megawatts, 20,000 kilowatts. That's a bit steep for urban fueling stations or supermarkets. I don't think they will need that level of capacity. But where I do see it being reused is I see it being reused for big transport haulage operators. I see it being reused at airports and at seaports, where you need a big lump of electricity in one space. The answer for ITER for urban fuel stations and supermarkets is the 1 megawatt lump that I talked about that we would normally use for a housing estate. We've reworked that to provide that as a lump that can go into a car park. So 1,000 kilowatts of EV charge capacity, that can go in a supermarket, it can go at a urban fueling station, whatever. So
That's
yeah.
amazing. Paul, sorry, I had another question as a follow-on from that question. These don't look really pretty, and I know this is utilities, I know this is infrastructure, but what is the capacity to actually bury these in the ground and have a nice garden on top? Is that possible?
We used to bury town centre substations. There's certainly some in our area. We're trying to get rid of them because they're a right nuisance. If we've got the space, I'd rather put it above ground. It's a lot easier for us. It's a lot cheaper. But, you know, I showed you that picture of that big outdoor substation earlier. One of those, not in the same configuration, but one of those lives under Leicester Square. And if you get into the world that UK Power Networks in London live in, there's quite a few big buried substations. I'd rather not do it with these. I think if we can find space at a motorway services for a couple of shipping containers and we can dump a unit quickly, that's going to be the future we need.
And just one last question quickly. Ganga's question about the weight.
Yeah, that's a good question, Ganga, and it's a really great question because I haven't got a clue. I'll have to. What I'll have to do is find out for you and get back to you. It's probably in the link to the project documentation that is on one of the slides. And we have got full functional specifications for the equipment, but I'll have to find out a weight and get back to you.
Okay, great. Well, we'll definitely put you in touch. We can do that after the meeting.
Thanks.
So just conscious, we're running behind schedule slightly. So I'd like to pass over to my colleague, Nigel Fraser, to give us an update on the transport infrastructure work we've got in the pipeline we'd like to involve you with.
Thanks, Dirk. So you've just heard some very interesting information regarding the transport sector. It's nice to see the roads side of things becoming more prominent. We've done quite a lot of work with bridges, viaducts, tunnels, multi-story car parks, airport buildings, stations, etc. in the past. This looks like a very exciting new development. I want to talk initially about the research topic and then come back to transport briefly. The main project that's underway at the moment is around offsite construction, concept design and delivery, and that's a guidance report which is very close to completion. We've had the peer review feedback now from a panel of experts that independent to the authoring group, and we're responding to their suggestions. Primarily, they've asked us to expand on the digital twins section, and we're collaborating with Building Smart International and their UK chapter specifically to do that, and sourcing case studies. And we've also developed a much more detailed case study of the forge that was mentioned earlier, which Landsec have provided. So that's coming together nicely now. Just a footnote on the previous report, Achieving Sustainable Resilience in New Precast Concrete Structures. But just significant that one of the project contributors there and Buildoffsite member has just been included in Building Digital's top 50 tech partners, and also nominated for Materials Performance Corrosion Innovation of the Year as a finalist in that. So our research topics are at the leading edge of things right now. In terms of projects to come up in the future, the client group have now approved two projects in principle. The one is around managing intellectual property, and whilst I don't want to go through the detailed points here because you can download those later, but the key thing here really is managing intellectual property for products is a little different to managing intellectual property for the design of a building or a piece of infrastructure that's specific and for a one-off use. And over my career in construction, I've seen I've seen a few significant investments in R&D not actually being brought to market because there are disagreements about how the IP is managed, who it belongs to, how they're going to be remunerated for it, etc. And we see it as being quite important that the various parties that are being brought together to create offsite solutions do it in a collaborative way that increases the probability of something coming to market and continue to be developed and the cost driven down, etc. So there's a number of aspects to achieving that, and we intend to build on earlier guidance in this area. The second is a project to look at the development of functional specifications, again, to reduce barriers to off-site manufacturing and modern methods of construction. You saw a reference to the WIMES work that was being done in conjunction with Buildoffsite for the water sector, with generic specifications for dosing kiosks, etc. You've also seen the development of a platform rulebook coming out of the Construction Innovation Hub. And basically, the more we can work with performance-based specifications early on in the project before supply chains are determined either off-site or traditional, it's a lot easier for suppliers to respond to invitations to tender if they're working on something that has not been, if you like, over-designed in the first instance. So we really want to take some of the good work that's been done and develop it further in terms of giving more generic guidance on how to specify projects early on, mainly for the specifiers, obviously, in the clients and the commercial advisors to the clients. So again, the client group has approved the concept for this, and this also has a project team being put together, being led by Sarah Frey in this instance. And the key thing, though, is that we really need to fund these projects, and some of you on this meeting may well be interested in becoming associated with them. If you are, please contact Dirk. From my perspective, I think these are great opportunities to actually influence industry going forwards and help the sector move in the way that the government and others would like to see it develop further. As Dirk said, we're not a nascent industry anymore, but there's still a heck of a lot more that we can be doing than is being done. And both of these projects are aimed at enabling that transformation of the industry and increase in productivity to be accelerated. So if you'd like to be associated with that, please contact Dirk and look at how you could be engaged with the sort of project steering group for that. Just a bit more on transport. In recent months, we've done 3 visits to the very large and very impressive precast facilities that the Align JV have set up for HS2 tunnels and viaducts. And we've just had another meeting with Transport for London hosting us at Victoria House, in conjunction with Network Rail's involvement and a group of the authors from the Linear Infrastructure Overbuild Guide, to look at, what is happening in this sector, what are their targets as rail infrastructure owners, and what are the current projects in London. And they were able to share information on that with those of us that attended. So it also provided an opportunity for people in the audience to have a really quite detailed Q&A session with people that had actually done projects like this, and we also had time for great networking, both in the middle of the meeting and at the end. So watch this space, because these events are really quite insightful and interesting. Back to you, Dirk.
Thanks very much, Nigel, and apologies if you heard my office fire alarm just now. Just to hand over the baton, so to speak, to Terry Mundy, one of our partners in the Buildoffsite Property Assurance Scheme, BOPAS, together with BLP, who's going to give us an update on where BOPAS is going. Over to Terry.
Thank you, Dirk. Yeah, as Dirk said, I'm a consultant with LRQA, one of the partner organisations that delivers BOPAS. I was also involved in its original development. Just a quick update on BOPAS. by the way, BOPAS, Build-Offsite Property Assurance Scheme, was launched in 2013. And since that time, it was launched in order to accredit offsite manufacturers, in order to assure lenders that the money that they may lend against accredited organizations was sound, and those accredited organizations were delivering MMC systems or offsite systems which had the structural integrity to achieve a design life of at least 60 years. Since that time, we've accredited, well, there's 93 organizations now, MMC providers, offsite providers on the BOPAS website. And I think there's been a bit of a sea change because we've had 21 new applications since the beginning of the year. And I went back to our sales team and asked if that was recertifications, but it's all new applications, which is quite interesting and quite incredible. We hold 6 monthly BOPAS forums, and we normally hold them at offsite manufacturers' premises in order that we can incorporate a factory visit. The May 2022 forum, we launched BOPAS Plus, which is the digital accreditation process. In December 2022, we launched the new BOPAS website, and the upcoming May 2023 BOPAS forum, which is being held at BT Passive in Norwich, the focus will be on finance and lending policy, and a bit more about that later on. I was going to provide a navigation around the BOPAS website, but because I'm not in control of where it's not my computer, I've had one or two problems when I've been controlling other people's computers in relation to going online. So I thought I'd just provide screenshots as being the safest bet. This is the home page, and About Us is about the partners and the founders, Buildoffsite, BLP, LRQA, and the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. Who we are and who we accredit, that includes, this is drop-down boxes, by the way, includes BOPAS process, accreditation database, case studies, and technical guidance. The technical guidance being the principles against which we carry out our assessment, the criteria against which we carry out assessments for BOPAS accreditation. Who we support, that's lenders, MMC providers, and professional services. And help and guidance is frequently asked questions and useful industry information. Now, were we to click on that and click on the accreditation database, then we would, okay. Anyway, this is the new format of the database, the accredited BOPAS manufacturers database, and it's color-coded with gold for BOPAS Plus, green for approved or accredited, and a brown color for under assessment. In this case, I've highlighted Situ, which is a BOPAS accredited. It has the gold vertical banner there, and it is accredited for design, manufacture, construction, and for the construction system. If I click on that again, then it takes me to more details on Situ. Again, in the top right-hand corner, there's the BOPAS Plus logo indicating BOPAS Plus approval. There's the color coding gold for BOPAS Plus, and there's the radar map, which is the evaluation of the organization against BOPAS Plus in terms of their goal of either digitization, digitalization, or digital transformation. And in order to gain BOPAS Plus, they have to achieve a minimum of threshold of 4 on all subjects that you see ranged around the radar map there. There is also an overview of the organization, and there is also a description of the boundaries of approval in relation to the construction system under which we just can't quite see, but that takes you into that area there. We talked earlier on about BS-PAS 8700, and by the way, there's a typo there, it should be 8700. And I had 1 or 2 questions in that regard to ask the attendees. Is that particular standard misconceived? I was on the workshop, the consultative workshop, the second one, and there was a groundswell of views in relation to the scope and whether indeed it should incorporate traditional build as well. Anyway, the upshot has been that DULUC have gone back to the drawing board in terms of determining scope, and we wait to see exactly what will be forthcoming. I have another question. Are top-down standards effective? And I make reference there to BRE BPS 7014, which had a scope of work which was almost as extensive as the PAS 8700, and I was on the review panel for that in December 2018 with a view to it being published in 2019, and it still, to the best of my knowledge, hasn't seen the light of day. This is the BRE MMC standard. What message does a plethora of standards for MMC indicate to stakeholders such as lenders, and does it feed or dispel the risk narrative? This is in relation to traditional build, which really isn't exposed to the scrutiny of MMC. And the reason I ask that question is because I've recently engaged with the lending community, and there is still an awful lot of perceived risk and uncertainty associated with MMC, which is one of the reasons why, of course, I don't think there's been the significant breakthrough that we sort of expected, with about 10% of the residential market currently being covered by MMC systems. And another question is, does the media feed into this risk narrative? If the lenders in particular perceive risk in the MMC sector, and then they see within the media such examples of MMC as this, which is just in the last week. All right, it's really bad news that Eco Modular Building Limited has appointed administration, which is bad in itself, but look at the photograph. I mean, could the media have chosen a worse photograph to support that particular statement? And then we have LNG modular homes hit by mold problems. This is a recycled piece of news. This was found back in September, and it was pass over to homeowners, and it was dealt with and addressed at the time, but this came out this week. So, you know, probably the offsite sector isn't doing itself a lot of favors in relation to what's happening within the media, and we don't have a lot of opportunities to, or we don't allow ourselves a lot of opportunities to address these negative media comments. I'm sorry, something seems to be going wrong on my screen, but and in stark contrast, this is the House Builders Federation Satisfaction Survey results, and I've just put up 2019 and 2022 to provide a comparison. Now, this is wrapped up in a good news story as far as HBF are concerned. But the question is, should it be really? Because we have 25, in 2019, we had 25% of respondents advising that they had 16 plus reportable defects. And that 16 is the threshold. It could have been ended up as being hundreds for all we know. And it's got worse since that time, because in 2022 in the survey, there was 27% of respondents who had more than 16 reportable defects. And I mean, it was wrapped up in the fact that, in terms of the good news story, that there was a greater level of satisfaction in 2022 than in 2021. I haven't put up what 2021's was. But I can completely understand why the level of satisfaction would be as it is, going up, even though defects are dropping off in terms of traditional build. And that is simply, there is not enough market penetration from the MMC sector to set an expectation benchmark for new homeowners. And I can completely relate to that, because when I moved into my new home 20 years ago and I had to develop a snag list which covered 3 pages, I thought it was the norm. And if anybody would have asked me if I was satisfied, I would have probably said yes. But then again, back in the 70s, which I can well remember, and I'm sure not many of you can, when I picked up my Allegro off the forecourt, and I had to slam the door 3 times to get it to shut, and I had to turn the radio up full blast when I was doing over 40 miles an hour because of the noise of vibration. I thought that was okay, that was the norm. But then, of course, the Japanese came along and introduced much improved expectation benchmark, and unfortunately Leyland went to the wall thereafter. So yeah, I think all in all, we've got quite a lot to do yet in terms of setting expectations, and hopefully we can do that through much greater market penetration in the immediate future. And hopefully BOPAS will play a major part in that regard. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Terry. Very thought-provoking stuff, and it's good to hear those sentiments being articulated in such a really powerful fashion. So I would like to just finish off the proceedings around the member meeting with some quick updates from members. As you've just seen, we have got a lot going on through the BOPAS scheme, but also with the Offsite Show coming up. And I would like to invite Jamie to be our next speaker.
Hi, thank you very much for the introduction, Dirk. Most of you won't have known who I am. I'm relatively new to Media 10, who are the event organizer of the Offsite Show, which is part of UK Construction Week. But for those who have spoken to me in the past, hello again. I'm working very closely with Dirk and Farita and Buildoffsite to really make sure that the 2 shows this year in May and in Birmingham in October are as provoking and intriguing for everybody, not just for exhibitors, but we're also have got a record amount of visitor registrations for London. We are on, we've got 8,000 registered visitors for London, which is fantastic considering this is only the 2nd year. We're expecting over 25,000. You can read the stats there. So 77% of attendees have direct purchasing responsibilities. We always work with the top representatives from the house building sectors, architects, and many tier 1 contractors as well. I think an important thing to mention is with all members of Buildoffsite, they've got some pretty good offers for this year. So up to 20% discount on stands. And we believe as a company, and we've seen recent press releases from Washington Post and the Times, that this is the first year since COVID that events are really back to to where they should be, and that goes in line with the amount of visitor registrations that we have. We also have 7 or 8 stand theatres across the UK Construction Week that are packed full of speakers, full of ministers. So if you can't take a stand, please come along to the show as a visitor, see what people have got to say. And it really is a good few days. I've exhibited there for various companies in the past, and it's always been something that's really worthwhile. In terms of the show specifically, we have 2 full-scale builds, one by British Offsite and the other by Home MMC, which we are extremely excited about, because naturally that's going to bring a lot of people to this particular section of the show. So we don't envision footfall being an issue at all across the 3 days. And if I can go to the next one. Oh, no, go and wait. Yep. So here is a little bit more about the show and the kind of the products that will be on offer. If you go to ukconstructionweek.com and look on the exhibitor list, you'll be able to see a full breakdown of who will be exhibiting, contact details, and everything like that. If you are interested in visiting or taking a stand, then please contact Buildoffsite themselves, or alternatively myself. And just on a final note, because I know Farita is going to be talking on a similar subject, is that we do also have quite a lot of digital marketing elements as well. So on the offsite, we're trying to be the nice media company. So we have a newsletter that goes twice a week on a Wednesday and Friday, highlighting the key areas of the MMC sector. It goes to 11,000 subscribers. So at the same time, please inquire and anything that you wish to regarding that too. But I hope to see you all in May. Over to you, Farita.
Thank you, Jamie.
Okay.
Can I control the slides? Thank you, Charlotte. So the strapline for today's, for this year's show is Build Offsite, a new stage of enlightenment for construction. You can see I've given you an impression of what our stand set arena is going to look like. So we have a main stage at the back with some benches, and then we have an innovation hub as well. So we're going to be all in one area, and the full programme is what we are going to be rolling out as well. So just on the main stage, I'm going to cover that off because we're a bit short on time today. We've got 3 days to cover. We have 2 headline sessions every day on the main stage and networking after those sessions. And we also have 6 sessions on the Innovation Hub. As you heard earlier, National Grid is going to be taking one of those sessions on day 2. So we do start off with making a concrete change for carbon precast. Is there one standard to be created? These slides are going to be shared afterwards, but we do have a full lineup of speakers who are coming through. So we've got speakers from the Infrastructure Projects Authority, from BASE, from Arup, from Homes England, from Mott MacDonald, from C-Probe as well. So we've got a whole range of speakers who are lined up across those 3 days, which is fantastic. On the Innovation Hub, we do still have some spaces. So if you are interested, then please do get in touch. I have got hands up from Silotank and Roger Bullivant. I think Nigel Rake is on this session as well. So it'd be really good to tie that down. And obviously Seamus, who you heard from earlier as well. This is what we have put together for our members, which is a sponsorship package. So because we have our own arena this year, we're really asking for our members to collaborate and engage with us. But also stand alongside us as a community for the 3 days at the show. So we've got gold, silver and bronze packages, and you can contact me if you're interested. I think it'll be really engaging, and you'll also see from the programme, we've got an evening reception on the Wednesday. So we will be hosting drinks, and we also have a rock band from Nigel Fraser, Construction Rock, so they'll be performing as well on the Wednesday. And then we'll be taking members out for dinner. It's invitation only, locally at the Excel Centre. So that's it for the Offsite Construction Show. So I'm going to pass and hand back over to Dirk to follow up with any questions. Hope that was fast enough.
Thank you. That was brilliant. We're really looking forward to seeing you all. You can register for free via the website link that I think is in the chat. But do come and join us. We're obviously reliant on the US members to help us make this happen. So do support us with the Innovation Hub, because I think that's a great opportunity to delve into the detail and have some really practical discussions with your peers about how to take things forward. So I'd like to finish today's members meeting with two very important presentations we've got from our members and supporters. We've got Thomas, I think, coming up next from Catax. So I'd like to pass the baton on to Thomas.
Thank you very much, Dirk. Yeah, so with April around the corner, I thought it would be quite prevalent to sort of recap on some of the changes that has happened with the R&D market. So I'm from a company called Catax. We've been around for the last 14 years within the innovation funding space. We've helped recoup over £500 million worth of tax relief for clients, and we've recently been bought out by a company called Ryan, who are globally #1 for business tax services, and we're going to be rebranding to the Ryan name from May. So the upcoming changes and the reasons behind why these are happening. So HMRC estimated for accounting periods ending in 2021, they paid out over £300 million of taxpayers' money due to fraud and error with R&D claims. Some 84% of claims that were investigated were deemed incorrect by HMRC. So there's been sort of 4 critical aims of the changes. Some we agree with, some we don't agree with, but I'll quickly run through these with you now. The main change really is the narrative that needs to be supported with the R&D claim. So the report that we support businesses with writing and submitting to HMRC really outlines what the scientific and technological advancements are, with specific detail around the uncertainties that you've encountered on trying to overcome the uncertainties within the project. Secondly, HMRC want to understand what the baseline of science and technology actually is or was, and the steps that you have taken to overcome them within your R&D projects, and a cost breakdown for each of those projects is imperative. Thirdly, the big change is all claims now be submitted digitally. There's no sort of sending these by post, which is what some claimants were previously doing. And lastly, if you are using an advisor, they will now be required to put their name into that, as well as a sign off by senior officers within the company. This is the sort of the main slide that I wanted to focus on today. So great news from HMRC in terms of the commitment towards R&D spending. That's increased by around 1/3 from the 2021 to 2022 levels. So the Chancellor announced in the autumn budget that there was going to be an increase with the research development expenditure credit. This broadly relates to larger claimants, companies, so businesses turn over 100 million, employ more than 500 staff, and have more than 86 million pounds on the balance sheet. So there's an increased rate of that. So as you can see on the right hand side there, for £100,000 spend on the old scheme, your net benefit will be 10,530. From April 2023 onwards, the net benefit is going to be increased to £15,000, so 15%. The changes incurred for the SME market are quite significant, and this is sort of what we've expressed our concerns to the HMRC around. So for small to medium SME market, it is bad news. With the expenditure credit, the uplifted rate is going to be decreased from 130% down to 86%. And for loss-making companies, the picture, unfortunately, is bleaker than that. So the rate is dropping from 14.5% down to 10%. So as you can see on the left-hand side, for profitable businesses, historical rate for your £100,000 spend would be 24,700, and your new benefit will be 21,500. So there's a slight decrease in that. For a loss-making business on the current scheme, for your £100,000 spend, you'll be generating £33,350. On the new scheme from April 2023 onwards, your benefit for loss-making business is going to be 18,600. So a real, a real blow to sort of the SMEs and startup markets who are in the development stage of their journey. And obviously, we are expecting further changes to the R&D scheme into tomorrow's budget. Moving on from that, there's a refocus on the reliefs to bring it more in the UK, so overseas activities. So if you're using subcontractors for manufacturing or software, etc., overseas, that's no longer a claimable expenditure under the new initiative. Moving quickly on, some additions to the R&D tax relief, so data and cloud computing costs can now be claimed for as well, which is a good benefit. And there is also an inclusion of pure mathematics as well with regards to the R&D scheme. Like I said, brief there, so apologies, but what I'll do is I'll send over a bit more sort of narrative around these changes to Dirk or Frida, whoever it may be. And obviously, if there's any information that you require, please feel free to reach out.
Thanks a lot, Thomas, and we will circulate these slides to everyone who's registered. So don't worry, we will provide you with the recording and the slides. So just to finish off our member updates, last but not least, I'd like to pass over to Sarah. Sarah, over to you.
Thank you, Dirk. Thank you very much for the introduction. And hello, everybody. It's good to have the opportunity to tell you a little bit about Building Understanding and the work we do, and the benefits that our work brings to our customers. So we're customer insight specialists, and our why, if you like, the reason we do what we do is that we believe that successful companies put the customer at the heart of their business. I started Building Understanding 12.5 years ago. It's a specialist independent qualitative research agency. We work with some of the biggest names in construction and development, for just to name a few: Stanhope, Galliford Try, Bouygues, and that you will notice that logo on the right-hand side of the screen. We have company partnership status of the Market Research Society. That's a big deal, actually. It means that we have to adhere to very strict standards, and we are squeaky clean. We are fully compliant with the latest GDPR legislation. Just going to tell you a little bit about the various services that we offer. The entry point often for a new client is our client perception study. If you commission a client perception study, it tells you how your customers really see your business, what your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats are. And by commissioning an independent to do this, you will find out a great deal that you didn't already know. Now, I'm very used to hearing from clients, oh, we have very close relationships with our customers. They're very open. We know what they're going to say. And very often that's not the case, because with an independent, with no axe to grind, the respondent will open up more and tell us things that you might not know. You will know, if you put a lot of time and effort into a tender, how important it is to know, if you didn't win it, what exactly went wrong? What part of the process was broken? How did your competitors outmaneuver you? And that's information that we can provide. We also do post-occupation evaluations or audits, both for contractors who might want to know how well a building works in practice so that they can refine their design for the next project. But we also do these for 3 major UK universities of Nottingham, Sheffield and Loughborough. So we review their projects, both the project journey and how well the building serves its users in occupation. And we also deliver for contractor clients customer satisfaction studies, where we gather data from their customers at different points in the process. There's no point doing this right at the end of a study only, at the end of a project only, I'm sorry. because then it's a bit like by shutting the stable door after the horse has bolted. You need to have time to change things to make sure that you can boost your customers' satisfaction. And where things have gone badly wrong, we can offer crisis interviews. So really that is an opportunity for catharsis. We'll go in and talk to the client about what went wrong and let them speak. We don't go in not armed with lots of questions. We'll let them take the lead, and we'll try and find a way back, a way to mend the bridges between the contractor and the client. We can offer project review workshops where we'll look carefully at a project throughout the journey and deliver lessons learned. And finally, we have a strong analysis function where we can analyse all the data we've collected, for example, in any 1 year, and deliver a report with insights and lessons learned. So here are the benefits for our clients. By listening to your customers and by acting on what they say, you are placing them at the heart of your business. And what we do will provide a wealth of knowledge about what they really think, and therefore really important insights that will signpost the way to a more profitable future for your business. And it comes down really to 3 words, all conveniently here beginning with the same letter: relationship, retention, and reputation. So the work that we do can help you improve your client relationships, increase the likelihood of them working with you going forward, and it can help you understand what people say about you, both inside and outside their organisation, and help you to enhance your reputation. But there are also benefits for your customers. There is no more sincere form of respect than listening to what somebody has to say. And if your customer feels that you are really listening to them, and importantly, acting on what you tell them, what they tell us, which is essential, because otherwise they feel they're shouting into a black hole, you must act on that feedback. They then do feel valued, their customer experience improved, and they are more satisfied as a result. So very briefly, how do we go about this? Well, we do our research face-to-face, either via Microsoft Teams or physically face-to-face. We do that because it gives the best quality feedback. If we're sitting facing somebody, we can observe them closely. We know where to probe. We know what they're not saying, and we know what to go after. And we audio record all of our interviews with the written permission of the respondents. That's so that we can deliver the words from the horse's mouth, if you like. And if you know your customer, you can hear them speaking when you read the interview report. We do one-to-one interviews, but also focus groups. And our team do this as their day job. They are professional interviewers. And because they are independent, the respondents will open up and tell us things that they might not tell you. For example, we can ask questions on what your competitors are doing differently, what you can learn. And it would be very difficult for you to get hold of that information if you ask directly. We also have a data portal. It's unusual for a company of our size to have something quite like this. It's not an off-the-shelf product. It's something we've built from the ground up and which we've developed over time to meet the needs of our clients closely. So it's an efficient way of distributing the data to make sure that you can get the very best value from it, that your people can read, can go in and read the last interview conducted with a customer just before they go to that next meeting. The portal is backed up daily. It's highly secure. You can choose to give access to particular people within your company, and that access can be separated by business unit, for example, so that they only see the data pertaining to their business unit. And most importantly, it's easy to use. You can use it by your mobile phone or through a browser. You can search all the responses to any particular question. So for example, if you wanted to look at design, or you wanted to look at all responses that mention the word well-being, you could do that very, very easily. I'm going to leave you with some wise words from Sam Walton, the guy who started Walmart. If you don't listen to your customers, someone else will. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, Sarah. You've added a lot of wise words yourself, some pearls of wisdom there, I think, for us to digest and take to heart. So I'll just close up the meeting for today with some closing remarks, but also looking ahead. As I think you've gathered from today's packed program, we are very active. We are active on all fronts, whether it's research, standards, or events coming up, which have been mentioned already, quite a few. We'd love to see you at the Offsite Show, either through a speaking engagement on our main stage, or as Farita said, as a modestly priced sponsor of our Innovation Hub, where you can really delve into your product developments, product specifications that you're working on, as we heard today from our members. This is our program for the rest of the year, as you can see on the slide. We've got a lot more in the pipeline, and Ken mentioned quite a few from his very active Built Environment group, and we hope to see you at those events, whether they're virtual or site visits. We are very much, thanks to us getting out of the post-COVID-19 period, we are now really focusing on getting more site visits in your diary, so there's more opportunities for networking, B2B networking coming up. And I think we've covered that off as well earlier. So I'll just close off by really underlining what Sarah just said about customer feedback. We really do value your customer feedback. We want to act on any insights, comments, views, issues you might have to improve what we provided you this morning. So do fill in the survey when you get it. And by all means, give us any other feedback you'd like to give us, and stay in touch. Come to our next site visit, which is up north, the HMP mill site visit, which we're doing in conjunction with Buildoffsite member Kier, but also on the 2nd to the 4th of May, we've got a packed program for you at the Offsite Show. So I hope to see you at one of our events soon, and thanks very much for coming to this member meeting this morning. Thank you again for your contributions and for your input as delegates to this member meeting today. Thanks again.